Hi there. Welcome to Paint Along with NATASHA MOUSTASHA. This is one of my very first videos, so please bear with me as I learn to make the experience a great one for you all. I'm just starting to lay down my paints. Some cyan blue, medium yellow, and titanium white. You can use a 3/4 angular or your 1-inch wash brush for your background, whichever you prefer. If you're new to acrylic painting and unsure when buying brushes, you want to look for synthetic varieties such as golden Taklon or white Taklon versus natural hair bristles. I'm going to use my paintbrush to start mixing a turquoise color. I'm just going to be mixing a green by combining yellow and blue, and then I'll be mixing that green back into my blue to create turquoise. Here I'm just mixing up my green. And I'm going to add a little more blue to that. Mixed around good. When I get to the final color of turquoise, I often will make my turquoise first, and it'll tend to be a bit dark. And then afterwards I'll just add small amounts of yellow until I get the hue that I like. And here I'm adding titanium white to the turquoise mix to brighten it up a bit and see the color come out. Whenever I'm switching between two colors, I always try to rinse my brush. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now, and I'm going to grab my wash brush, or my background brush I call it. Grab a little bit of this blue, so I'm going to do like equal parts. So this is going to be, I'm going to say half and half of yellow and blue, because I found with this shade it needs, so I may just actually scoop all of this yellow and put it in here and just mix that right up. Once you get it all thoroughly mixed, if it looks too green or too blue and you're not seeing the aqua, this one may need a bit more blue. Yeah, so that looks a little too green for me. So I'm going to just continue to add some amounts of blue, and you can just work with it. And if you're having trouble kind of seeing if it's light enough, just go ahead and add a little bit of white to it, and you'll see the true kind of color come out. So I put about another part of that blue, and I'm just going to really mix that in well, and it's starting to get that bluer tint. I'm going to need a bit more now. Okay, so I might just take this big chunk here. I probably could have mixed that all together instead of going in a separate place, but this is probably why I don't bake. I'm not exactly exact with my measurements. Okay. So, and these colors may seem dark until you add a little bit of the white in there. You can use a paintbrush, but my water is quite mucked up. I dropped some of the blue paint in it, a little too much. So I'm going to actually just go ahead and grab just about a little dollop. You can use whatever's on hand. So I'm just going to mix in that white there, and you'll see that turquoise kind of brighten up. Okay, so once you've got, I'm going to grab a little more. Okay, so once you've got a shade that you like, You can experiment, and there's no rule to the shade of the background. You just want to make sure you have a good amount of paint to start with. But this blue goes super far. As long as you've got about, I would say about a couple of toonie sized olives, that should do you, because once you thin it out with water, also it from your brush, it will spread pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna just saturate this big brush here. This is a 1-inch flat brush or wash. I think it's a flat because the bristles are a little bit longer. I find when they're shorter, about that's really the only difference. They'll call this the flat brush, and this is the wash when it's the bristles are more short. So once you have your brush kind of coated, just go ahead and start kind of coating the background. And you can use your same paint water because it's most likely the same color. And I do kind of X brush strokes. I find that helps me to cover my canvas a lot quicker and really even. So I'm just kind of doing these, and you can kind of smooth it out afterwards. It's just good for initially covering it. And this is okay, so if you have your background kind of laid out, I'm going to just brighten this a little bit because I don't know if you guys are actually seeing it, the turquoise in here. So I'm going to add, right here, I'm going to add some white and just really lighten this all up so you can see that hue a little better. I think we're going to let the background dry and take a little bit of a break. We're probably going to do about 10 minutes. It's okay if it's not completely dry, but you do want it to be somewhat like tacky at least. We're going to start with the laying out the shapes of the sunflower. So now what I like to do for this particular one is I'm doing these long kind of brush strokes back and forth, like kind of like trying to get the layer of paint like pretty smooth, and you don't really want like any clumpies or anything, because then you'll have to wait longer for that area of the painting to dry. So if you've got a lot of excess moisture on there, I just suggest like just give your brush a squeeze, and obviously you don't want the canvas to show through, but just kind of lightly go back and forth like this. So I like to go all the way, and you're going to pick up more paint as you go. So I'm just kind of, and most of this is moisture. Your brush will absorb a lot of the water as you go. So I'm just going back, and then I'm going to just leave mine about there. If anyone wants to send me pictures or ask any questions along the paint night, let me know. We'll try and get the 10 minutes to let the background dry as much as possible, and I'll be back. Awesome. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get out my red and magenta. The reason I like to add magenta to the color list is that sometimes it's just nice to have the deeper hue. Like magenta is actually the primary color, and it just gives you a little more working room when you're mixing colors. So if you want to darken things up, adding magenta really helps with that. But it's totally not necessary to have it. Red will be just fine. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that. What I'll do is I'll show, I will do, anyone who just has the red, just don't add the magenta to your palette. It's okay. It's just going to be there kind of on the side for me. Or if I want to darken things up, you can just use like a pure black instead. If you get to a spot where you want to darken the red a little bit. or your brown. I just kind of use it as a replacement for black sometimes in my painting. I've got that, and then I'm just going to put my red on my palette. This is like Artist Loft Flow Acrylic from Michaels. I've got this red out now because I'm actually going to mix the purple. And that's going to give me, allow me to actually make a brown, adding a little bit of the yellow. So my palette is getting quite kind of mucked up, so I'll probably add a second one, but if you are running out of room on your plate or whatnot, now would be a good time also, because we're going to be adding different colors. So I'm just going to grab a second palette here. Okay, so I'll be like swapping out for this one in a minute, but right now I'm just going to get my red out there, and then I'm going to actually grab my medium yellow tone as well and add a bit more of that. So I put a good helping of it there. So I've got my yellow on, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of my blue, and that was the not this, if anyone has turquoise or cyan, we're not going to do that one, we're just going to do the straight regular blue. I'm sorry, I've got it listed as cyan blue, but it can also be like, there's a lot of different things that are around. I know one of them made with cyan, so it's just basically making blue. So I'm just going to put that there. And what I'm aiming to do is just kind of make a purple mixture here. So I would say I would start with 2 parts of the red and then 1 part blue, because blue actually goes a really long way. So I'll just give you an example here. So I'm just going to grab a little bit and kind of, I'm going to switch my palette out now, so you guys can see on a bigger area. So this is going to be just a brown. So all I'm doing is I'll start with just showing you guys the color mixture. So this is my red. Now you can also use magenta in place of red at this step if you would like. So I'm adding red, and then I'm just rinsing my brush so it's not getting dirty to add in the next color. And I'm dabbing it off on my, I'll just put my napkin right there. I usually use painting reds, but then I'm going to add just a little bit, about the same, or about half of what I did for the red. So about that. And then when you mix that in, depending on your hue, you're going to start to see a purple come out. So that's not enough. So I'm going to add a little bit more. So just kind of keep adding to that blue. And there you go. See, I'm not sure if you guys can see that. I'm just rinsing my brush again so I don't muck up my red too much. I'm going to add a bit more. So right, so now it's a bit red. I mean, it's a bit on the red end, but it's actually more. I'm going to bring that a little closer because you can see it a bit better. Something like that. Yeah, that's nice. So got that. Now you can make it a bit more blue, but it's because we're mixing this for brown. It's not super important as long as you've got somewhat of a purple hue kind of starting. So I still have my mucked up water from earlier in the separate jar, and then I'll just take your angular brush. So I'm using this one here again. I'm just kind of rinsing it. My water's getting a bit dark now. So I'm going to actually just saturate that. Now I'm going to just do, so the center of the flower, you're just going to want to do the layout of it. Just kind of visualize where you're going to be putting the petals. And so the circle kind of comes to about, if you divide the canvas into 3 sections, so 1, 2, 3, it's kind of going to come to the second third of it. So so that 2/3 of the way up, and that way you're leaving still some room for the petals to go around. And I always say kind of underestimate, to leave yourself a little bit of room to kind of for error, but what I do is, I'm going to come up close with this. I always like to put the tip of the brush the opposite direction that I'm painting. So I'm going to just start from here, and I'm going to kind of pull it out. So you see there, it makes a nice clean line. And I'm just going to try and do as good of a circle as I can. And don't worry too much, we're getting a lot of chances to redo that. If you don't like the angle that you did, it's really, you can kind of come back. And I've grabbed more paint. I grabbed a little water on my brush and I put a couple drips in like that. Or I'm going to put a couple drips like that just to get my paint a little loosened up. Because that way when we're doing especially the clean lines, it will help it spread easier. So there we go. So the good thing is once you've got that in, you can just go ahead and take this same paint and just fill that whole center in solid with this chocolate brown color. If you've got like a burnt umber or a brown paint that you've got on hand, go ahead and use that. You don't need to mix your brown, but I just thought it would be a good way to spare or to use the least amount of paint colors. So that way people, especially people who are new to painting, they don't have to go ahead and search for so many colors or get so many colors at one time. And if you notice, I'm kind of just following the angle of the circle with my brush stroke. So I just do long kind of circular. I'm going to just stand. I might be blocking your view for a moment. No, I'm on. And don't worry about this being like perfect or perfecting this part at all, because this is going to get quite a few different layers when we start adding in the little flecks that go on along the inside of the circle. So you basically just look, you might see a little bit of your background showing through. That's okay. Just the goal is to try and get this paint smoothed on as much as possible, or a thin layer. You want it to be somewhat dry so that when you put the little lines that kind of make the texture of that center on, they'll pop way better if they, it's kind of like nail polish where that first coat, if it doesn't get a chance to dry, there's really no sense in putting the second one on. So now that I've got that laid out, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch my water because I'm going to be using yellow. So I'm going to go, this is my little Tostitos. I save these. I think they're great for paint. And I suggest if you're going to be starting with your yellow, just go and get yourself a clean glass of water also. Alright. And any of your bigger brushes, you might want to just to rinse those ones out as well. So I have my black here and I have some, I mixed sort of a brown, and I'm not sure if that it's, it doesn't look super brown in this, this light here, but if I were to add some white, titanium white to that, you can see it kind of pop out a little more color. I'm just going to grab a little bit of fresh titanium white, put that on the side. I might even do two separate piles of it. I call them piles, but blobs of whatever. You want to have one that's kind of not as mucked up.
For this step, I'm using the 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch angular brushes.
You want to beforehand maybe do like some spacing. You could put little dots along just to kind of, if you want it to be very symmetrical, but I just kind of tend to just follow along and put them where I see fit. But so this one here, these ones are going to be kind of going off of the page a bit. Now, I actually am going to, I said to kind of underestimate here because I find that sometimes you'll go way too high, and then you really don't leave yourself room for the petals, and then it's kind of hard to go backwards with covering something dark with yellow. So I'm going to grab that initial view, and just as I was mapping this out, I saw I kind of wanted to come up a little bit with this circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And probably more closer to this is what I'm going to be going for. There. Okay, so that's a better angle. Now, I'm going to try not to touch this area now with this yellow because I don't want to muck it up, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these first ones. So if you look, I'm just going to kind of do an initial one here and fill that in a little, just loosely. And I'm not doing any, this is just my same brush stroke I use for doing the clean lines, where I point the tip of it the opposite direction that I'm painting. Once you have your shapes laid out, then you don't have to worry so much about filling it in, being as careful. But now I'm adding a few drips of just clean water to my yellow, just to make it a little more flowy. I don't want it too much slow, but I added about 3 drops just to kind of thin it out, because I want it, when I'm doing these clean lines, it's really good to have it to be really not kind of too sticky on your canvas. So now what I'm going to do is I'm leaving, if you notice as I go around, I'm going to leave a little tiny gap like in between the petals. Now, if you look at the original painting, you'll see like kind of tiny little gaps in between the petals, and you'll see petal that's behind kind of like shows through. And these are just the initial shapes. You can go back then and reshape these if you're wanting to. You can always like make them a bit larger if one of them you don't like the shape of it. So acrylic paint's great that way, where you can repaint it once it's dry. Just quickly cover over paint, especially in a color like yellow. For instance, I'm not sure if you guys are able to see. Now that's pretty dim, the lighting, so hopefully I may add a little bit more white to my yellow just to kind of make it pop a little bit more so you guys can see, but in person you wouldn't necessarily need to add this. That's it. So I just got a way later, I get more of a deep yellow here, and it's just so you can see the lines here a bit better. There we go. And I've added a little more water. So, okay, I'll just kind of highlight these. See where some lines like that. And then right here, I kind of estimated that I would be about here, but as you can see, as I'm going along, it's sort of can change a little bit, so you can kind of adjust it. Do this. So I'm kind of just doing that same thing. So I do one half at a time. More. Now, if you're more comfortable, like starting at the bottom and coming up like that, then and instead of starting here and going backwards, that's totally fine too. So when you get near the bottom, you can just, depending on what your petal's doing, just go right off. Pretend that that edge isn't even there, and just go right off the edge. Got it. Wherever it is that you end up, like leave off. So if your petal can stay on the canvas, then keep it on, and if it would be this long and it would go off the canvas, just go right off, just the same as you did at the top. Now, I'm going to check the comments and just make sure everyone's okay with this step. And then while I'm doing that, I would say if anyone is following along right where I am, then you can go ahead, and I'll just show, I'll show this again, so anyone who's not here, don't worry, but you can kind of go in and just start. Now, I would lay my brush like flat now and go do that same shape, but just follow it along and fill in each one. Now, you can definitely, this would be a good time to switch to your larger brush, depending on how large your canvas is. If you just have a little tiny canvas, you might want to still stick with that one if you have little tiny petals, but this will help you to kind of get broader coverage here. And if I lay my brush flat and just follow the shape, and when I get to the middle, you can just cut it down. Just like this, and this is a good time you can kind of make the tip of it a little more precise or defined, say. And I just kind of follow, and I'm not going to do them like totally solid, just like I'm not going to worry about making them solid. I'm just going to do more of like lines. like, and I have my brush kind of sideways, and then I'll just kind of like lay it flat for some, and then just loosely. That's kind of what you're going for. I'll come up a little closer, maybe for this last one, so you can see what I'm doing. So I just start about here, and I'll grab a little more. So if I start about here and I've got a good amount of paint, I just kind of do that and flow, and then sometimes I'll put my brush sideways and just do a few lines like that. It'll help add to the kind of texture of them if instead of just kind of going in totally solid. So I'll just leave that there for a moment to just set. Now you can also shape out your leaves like this one. If I wanted it longer, I could just kind of, or changing the shape a little bit. You can just go in and do that now. While I'm checking the messages, see if anyone needs to ask anything. Oh, so move easels so we can see. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was probably standing right in front there. Hopefully, oh, okay, I'm gonna actually change this palette to up in this other corner. That may help also. Hopefully I wasn't covering for too much of the step. So I'll just do a couple of those a little up close for you guys to see. And what I did was I kind of took my medium angle brush here, the larger of the two, and just kind of went and traced along. Now when I want to get like more broad or more coverage, I'm just laying my brush flat like that, but I'm still kind of following those same lines. Then you can reshape your petals if you're wanting to at this stage. And I just, so when I do a few just kind of lines so that it's not totally a solid look right yet. What I'm going to get you to do is to start kind of mapping out your behind petals. Now I'm adding a little bit more yellow to my brown, which is still actually wet. This is my deep kind of chocolatey brown I mixed from earlier. Just want that to get a little more of a brown here. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do the same sort of thing. Now, don't worry too much about the shape here either. If you look at the behind, keep in mind that they stop a little bit shorter than the front ones. That will really help give the effect that they're in the distance slightly. That's one suggestion. And just when you're coming into the bottoms, you're going to just pretend that you're stopping short, but just be careful that you don't, get your paint into the yellow. I would suggest just kind of starting small with a little shape there and just stop short about there and just do these tips first, and then you can come back after and kind of fill them in. So I just added a little more water in my paints kind of, and I'm still using my 1/2 inch angular brush. So I'm just imagining that these are kind of cut off. So if I were going all the way down, it would curve. You're doing sort of the same shape, just in behind. So I'm not going to worry too much about connecting them up at this point. So that's those ones there. Now you can definitely go back and shape those after. But I'm just kind of laying them out there so they have they have their spots. And then a couple of these I do like to actually kind of curl just to give it a little bit of personality, I guess. So all I'm doing is just sort of curving one, or even I'll probably come up here and I'll do this one the opposite way maybe, and that's just that's totally optional. And then I'm going to come and just lightly drag this down. Now, I'm really trying to, I'm going to actually come over closer so you guys can see. I'm going to try to avoid touching the yellow as much as possible. So if you kind of, you can go sideways with your brush, and I'm just going to bring that down kind of in between there. Now, don't worry about like this area here so much, because that's going to be kind of, you're going to have a, like, this is going to be more of just like a shadow area, and you're going to be doing a few more details over top. This is just kind of the behind layer to get some darkness in behind, but you'll have lots of chances to fill kind of from here down that circle around this flower. That doesn't really need to be done. So you're going to be doing like a rim around this, the center of the flower anyway, so I just kind of want to get it down this area, down in between these two petals here is what you just want to make sure you get that. And I'm just laying my brush flat, and I'll do kind of sweeping motions, just like the sweeping brush. And I'll put this back here. I'll just do one more example. So I'm just kind of, to get in between here, I'll just, and don't worry about like getting right, like super close to the flower or the other petals beside, just as long as you're getting a little bit close. There we go. And you want to just focus on getting it to about here. You don't have to worry about this area here. That's not super important, because you'll have lots of chances to fill that in after. And I'm just going to do these. I'm actually mixing a little bit of brown. I'm just adding yellow and probably a little more red too. I'm kind of getting low on my brown, so I'm mixing those colors. I'm going to do this one now, so there we go. Alright, so might even darken, I mixed a bit darker of a brown, and you can use your black also if you wanted to, but I would still suggest sticking with just the deep brown for now. It's nice to sort of mix as dark as you can before using black if you're going to use black, because then when you do use it, it'll really pop out a lot more, because it will be the darkest still. Use a lot of black in your paintings to darken it up, I find that it will sort of wash out. It won't give that same nice like gold pop of your black when you want to really deepen an area. Okay, so that's where we're at now. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some fresh, either, I already have a bit of magenta, but I'm going to just add my red here. So it would be the Cadium red. And I want to just have a fresh pile of it. And this would be a good time to just rinse your water if you like to swap it out for some clean stuff, and even just give your brushes a quick rinse. What we're going to do here is start making some of these center kind of lines here, and I'll show you guys what I do for that. This area here is going to just be covered in almost like some of this brown color that I've mixed here, and you can use, like, if you have a brown on any of the paints, you can go ahead and use like a burnt umber or brown will do just fine with this too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this this color here, and I'm going to use my angle brush. What I do is I want to get this kind of like saturated, but I don't want a lot of liquid on there, like not too much water, just kind of enough to coat your brush. So I'm even going to go and just kind of wipe off the excess. I really don't want to have too much on my brush. So you just wipe it off the side like that. And then, so you're just gonna coat your brush and just make sure your paint's like nice and flowing. If it's too thick, you might want to add a couple drops of water. And now that I've got my brush coated, I'll do this up close so you can see what I'm about to do. Within this kind of darker area, I'm going to be doing these sort of lines, and all I'm doing is the tip of my brush is again pointed. I'm going to try and get this on the right angle. Okay, that's probably better. Right about maybe there. So when I'm going along, I'm just doing these little brush strokes, and I might get a lighter color to show you guys this, but for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around and kind of do those colors around the center of the flower. That's going to give it that kind of spiral texture. But right now, when you have this brown, you're going to go around the edge of this kind of and just lay a little bit of color on it. Flat, like you're going to just do another coat to kind of deepen the outside of the center of the flower, and just kind of give it a bit of depth and texture, and make that color a little bit more rich. So just really around the perimeter of the flower, and don't worry so much about. And I just went about maybe like 2 inches, but if you have a smaller canvas, about 60 micron, you're going to go about an inch around this perimeter of the center, and that just gives it a little bit of a red tone and a little bit more of a brown hue coming through, and you'll still see this darker background kind of popping through. So don't worry about making it super solid. I'm just adding a bit of water to my brush to kind of help that to spread better. Now, yeah, the goal is actually not to get it super solid, so don't worry if you're seeing color showing through. Now I'm going to dry my brush off and just kind of squeeze the moisture out of it. Now this would be a good time to use your black. So I'm just going to dip straight in and coat my brush like that. And this is the same brush I'm using, and I'm going to do my little center here. So just like this. And you want to just get that laid on. I'm going to make a clean line that same way that I've been doing all the others. Just put the tip of my brush the opposite way, and just kind of fill that in solid, that center area. And I'm just going to give that a good rinse once I use that black. So if you're doing your center piece now, you want to make sure you kind of give it a good rinse and squeeze out. You need to give it a little wipe to make sure you've got most of the paint off the brush. And then I'll come back. I'm just going to straighten my bristles out there. I'll come back and I'm just going to dip, or I've mixed this kind of red here, but I'm going to be rotating between that and also just red and also a little bit of yellow. So what you'll see is I'm going to make a few different variations of color here, and this is the trick is you want to have a good contrast. So you don't have to worry so much about what exact color it is. You're going to be working with dark and then light. So I would say a lot of these colors that you've probably already mixed, if you still have some of them going, you can kind of experiment. So for instance, and get your darker colors. So for instance, here's some of the blue mixture that looked a bit on the darker side. I wouldn't want to use this right now, but now if I added, say, a little bit of red to that, and then maybe a little bit more of this blue, I'm going to get kind of like a nice purple happening. And you want to just mix a few of your colors together and get some different shades. As long as they're different, it doesn't really matter like what the exact shade is, as long as some of them are dark and some are light. And then what you can do is, here's a good example for the lights. You've got this lighter blue. Now you can remix and just make like some yellows and mix a little bit of a little bit of red in with it and make a bit of orange, like for instance right here. It's making, well, I've got some paint still on my brush, but you're getting kind of like a lighter, a pinky color here going on. You could even grab a little bit of this blue, and it would probably make a sort of a mauve. The reason I'm kind of not being exact with this is because it's going to be more of like you're going to go in like a flow of rotating between the colors, and it's going to be totally different for everybody. But as I go, I'll show you what I mean by like the rotating. So you're going to be doing one light color and then one dark one kind of right beside it. So some of these hues are a lot darker, and then you've got the lights and these lighter colors that have been brightened with titanium white. Those are the ones you're going to be kind of rotating with. So I'll just show you a couple of examples of the brush strokes I'm going to be doing. So here again, I just coated my brush. I don't want it to have a lot of excess paint. And I'll come a little closer so you guys can see this. I'll probably add maybe a little, actually, of the pure red, because I want to really be able to show you guys up close what I'm doing here, and it might show up a bit better. So that color's not really super bright either, but in person I'm seeing it well, but just it's an odd angle. So what I may do actually is I may actually start with some of the lighter ones. So instead I'll just kind of mix in a bit of this yellow here, and this will show up for you guys, and then I'll move to the dark second so that it's gonna show up. What I'm gonna do is, because I've done dark here, you can't really see it, but I'm gonna try and get a good angle here. The glare is really hard to get this to show you guys, but I'm gonna just do a line. So I've got the tip of my brush pointed the opposite direction again, and I do the line, and then when I do it, I kind of come back and I can kind of flick outwards and get like a point to the ends of them. So if you start in the center, I'll get a little closer. If you start in the center and you just kind of come and flick outwards like that, you'll get kind of like a taper at the end, but that one's probably a bit long. But where I have these light ones, dark ones, I'm gonna put a light one right beside. But I'll just go ahead and do a few of these since I have the yellowish color on my brush right now. So you're just kind of doing random ones, and don't worry too much. Just kind of follow the shape of the flower itself. And I do them all different sizes. There, that's probably better angle there. Some of them will come right off the page, just like this. And there, you can kind of start to see it taking shape. Now, I'll just go back and I'll grab a white and I'll brighten that a little bit. If you take this white and add a little bit of it to the color you're working with already, hopefully, yeah, that's probably better for you guys to see. Maybe that angle doesn't have as much. I'm just doing this and kind of flicking outwards. I'm going to grab a little bit of water just to make it a little more flowy. So I'm going to move this side, move this there. And I'll just maybe brighten up that view a little bit. See if I can get a better lighting. Alright, so once you have your lines kind of drawn on, I go all the way to the center of this. So I'm not doing them in any particular pattern, just kind of here and there. I don't want to put too many, but you just kind of step back and you can see how it's starting to take shape. Now that I have the light on, you'll probably be able to see better where I'm placing them. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you the next color, and it'll probably be a bit darker of one. So I just kind of rinsed my brush off because I'm going to be switching colors. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab probably this deep color, and I'm going to put that on one of the sides of the light colors. So you just pick a side. It doesn't really matter which side you pick. I usually do when it'll be either above or below, but you kind of want to stick with the same, whatever you pick, just do it kind of consistently. So it's just kind of making a bit of a shadow behind. And it's probably not too easy to see here, but it does add a bit of definition or texture. It just defines the lines. Once I have those kind of laid out, I'm going to rinse my brush again, and I'm just going to choose a color. So, believe it or not, you can even throw in a little bit of the blue, or even just a straight red, or a few flecks of green. There isn't really any rules. I'm going to actually get a little bit of this, move that over so you can see. I'm gonna grab I grabbed a little bit of purple. I'm gonna just grab some of this blue and mix in, just deepen it a little bit so it looks more purple. There was a bit of red on my brush. So. Now this color is really gonna probably pop. This one's probably gonna pop pretty well because it's very light. But you can switch it up, and I'm probably only going to do a few and try and get them as thin as I can. And I'm just kind of going around. What I'm doing is kind of trying to make them more random instead of like all clustered in one area, just putting a few. So that's just to give it a little bit of texture. And you can't even really, like, when you look at it at a glance, it looks like a brown, like a center of a sunflower, but then there's going to be all different colors in it, which is kind of neat. So now I'm going just straight into my Cadium red here. I'm going to just wipe off the excess paint, like this on the edge of my palette. So yeah, I just want it like lightly coated. I'm going to maybe go right underneath one of my lighter colors. This one's going to, I actually grabbed a bit more paint. I'm going to probably grab a little bit of water and just stay away from that yellow for now. I'm going to add a few yellow or reds just here and there. You don't really have to worry about where they go at this point. If you see a little spot that needs some color, just go ahead. I like to make them like somewhat like even. So if I'm putting a color on, I like to make sure that pretty much like all of the whole center will have at least a little pop of it somewhere. And I'm just keeping my brush sideways and just kind of lightly flicking at the end of each brush stroke and trying to get like a edge. Now, you can go in and you can blend this a little bit and soften it if you like, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a sec. Or you can just leave it like defined like that and with the harder edges. But I'll show you the two different results. I'll maybe do like half of each side. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of my medium yellow, and I'm going to get like just a pure mix of that. And because I want to mix just a little bit of orange, so I'm going to grab a little bit of this red, not a lot at all. I'm going to mix that into my yellow. I don't want it to be like straight yellow, just a bit of an orange here. I'm going to turn this around so you guys can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go along in some of these darker colors. I'm going to just kind of put a little thin bit of this orange hue that I've mixed. Just kind of to give it a little bit more. And as you go, you're probably, I'm going to cover that now, you're probably going to start getting, if you step back, because you're so close to your painting, if you step back, you'll see sort of it in a new light, or a new perspective. Sometimes when you're really up close, it's hard to really see what it looks like as a whole. I find it helps me to do that. Now, I've got a few of these colors on here, so I'm probably going to just leave them like this for now, for this area. I don't want to overdo it, but as you can see, it's just all a variation of color. And what I was going for was just rotating and putting the light ones close or beside a dark color. So dark being, you know, the browns and the reds and the deeper like maroon kind of hues, or even the purples. And then anything you're adding white or yellow to is going to brighten it a bit. So anyways, I'll show you the technique I'm going to use to sort of buff these. Now this is optional, but you can kind of go along. And you see, I just laid this, oh, that's right in front. I laid my angle brush just, here, I'll go a little closer even so you guys can really see this. I laid it just flat and I'm going to go along. Now, something I want to say is, if you are brushing like some of them down, you don't want to go over them too many times and kind of, their lines will start to kind of fade into each other too much and you'll lose some of that nice color. But what I do is I went down this way. So if you see, my brush has picked up all kinds of paint now. So if I were to go over this yellow, it would totally muck it up. But I can change my brush to use the other side and come back up and then do the yellow. It's just a little kind of tip, and I'm just going to still use that same cleaner side and just lightly, and that's yellow too, so I can kind of use that same side. If it had like a dark color like red or something, I wouldn't want to do that. So you can see they're starting to, and the yellow is probably fine to go over the blue also. It sort of takes away some of the color, but it gives it a nice kind of blended, almost like a blurry effect. I tend to buff them very gently. Now, with your brush, you want to just rinse it from time to time. After, 6 or 7 brush strokes, even if you can get some clean water for this point. So I'm just going to kind of pat my brush. I don't want to have too much water on it. And I'm going to go back into blend. So I always say, like, whenever you're blending, all of these, I'm going to just go over them. If, like I said, if you're going over one of the really light colors, you want to just try to avoid covering up any of your, like if you have red on your brush, you don't want to go over top of the all the light colors. So that's a good kind of base, and it could even be the final center, like it depending on how much you want to work with that, and you can make it really pop, really brighten up these center white, or not white, but lighter areas, and you can re-highlight those if you like. Once this has had a chance to kind of dry a little bit, or you can come back in and do a second layer. Remember that you want to work with a really cleaner, dry brush, like by rinsing it off if you're going into sort of blend these lines. But I always say, like, lay your shape on first, and then go into blend. I'll do something up close just because I know when I'm at my painting events, some people sort of are struggling with this one step where I'll try to get it, whoops, I'll try to get a good angle for this. But for instance, right here, if I'm going and doing this line, for instance, and then I wanted to get that kind of buffed effect, I would be rinsing my brush, which I'm just going to do that now. Some water, and then you're going to really want to totally pat it dry and squeeze all the excess water out. You really don't want much water on your brush for this. And I'll go up close. So where you see this hard line separation, so this line here, right where the two colors meet, so the dark and the light, you're going to take you could use either this brush or any kind of flat brush, and just kind of go along that edge. So put your brush kind of like half in between the light and the dark, and then just drag it down flat like that. And you see you get that fuzzy effect. Now, I wouldn't want to go back up with this same dirty side that I just picked paint up, so I kind of just flip my brush so I get to the bottom and just like sweeping like motion really, and then I'll go along the other side like that. And you can kind of just work it in a bit. And I mean, this is sort of like an abstract-y kind of center of this. It's not meant to be super precise or anything. It's more to just have fun with it and go with how you like the look of it. You can make it as bright or as colorful. You could even put neons in there. I've seen people do all kinds of neat things. So I'm just going to let that layer dry. And then the last step of this is really just to do these a little bit of a fuzzy area around this perimeter of the flower, and then I'll show you guys the last technique just to get these to have a bit of texture and light and whatnot, and then that's going to be wrapping up the sunflower part, and then we can. This is optional, but you can definitely write some text across here. Some people like to leave it plain, and that's cool, and then other people like to put the saying on. If you're really not finding it easy to do, you could practice first on something separate if you wanted, or if you're really nervous, like you're like, oh, I just painted this whole thing and I don't want to ruin it. You can go to like Walmart and craft sections in a lot of those stores, or even an art store, and you can usually find acrylic paint markers. That's personally what I would suggest for someone who's not really comfortable with using a like something like this, which I have on the materials list. It's more like the pointer brush, or it's a 0 round, but, oh, sorry. There, it's just this like pointed one. What I'm going to do is just sort of let this all kind of, I'm going to allow these part to kind of set a little bit longer, and then I'm going to go rinse my water, and I'm going to get out, so I want all my brushes to pretty much be clean at this point, and also I'm going to just get new mixes of some paints, so any that are like super mucked up. Like I still have some white that's pretty clean, and a bit of yellow, but I'm going to probably add some yellow and some, I actually have enough white, but if you don't have enough yellow kind of left over, you want to have a fresh pile of yellow there. Okay, so here's where you're going to see the petals kind of come together and look a lot more lively. If you look at the original painting, you'll see sort of different variations of color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on making these ones darker and these ones lighter. So in the same kind of way that I did with mixing these colors up, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to grab some yellow. And I actually have some orange over here, so that's actually what I'm going for. Too, is that it's going to be an orange. So since I already have them, if you don't already have an orange mixed up, I'm just lightening it a little bit, so I didn't want it that dark to start with. So this is more of like an orange hue. Yeah, but a little bit more with the actually, even though I just lightened it. A little bit darker. So, or like a little bit more orange. Okay, so I have just a bit of that, and then I've got some white and some white, between white and just some yellow. And I'll probably add a little bit of a lighter yellow in here too, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm just going to do that with straight white. So I'm just going to add, maybe just dip my brush. You don't need a lot of white to lighten your yellow, just add that in, just so it's a bit brighter. Okay, so it's more of a sunny yellow, I guess. Alright, so since this brush here, this is my half angle brush, I'm just going to dip that in my orange, and I'm going to take the orange, and I'm just going to kind of do some of these, and I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, just enough to really coat it, and then, oh, actually, I'm not sure if you guys can see me. I'm going in, and I have the tip of my brush pointed the opposite direction, and I'm just going to follow those lines. And make them up a little closer for you guys. So all I'm doing is actually just kind of doing some very loose brush strokes. I don't want to do too many. I want the background, this background to still be showing for a little bit. Oops. And I'm starting to lose a little paint, but that's okay. Or my brush is kind of getting down to not much paint left. Okay, so that's all. I don't want to overdo it too much and add too many in, because I'm going to be doing a couple different colors, but that's the idea. So just kind of continue to do a few different colors of that, and then I'm going to do sort of a similar way of blending where I soften this up, but I will show you that step afterward. Now, since I don't want to get too light with my colors, I want those behind ones to still look quite dark. You can either use, if you have like a brown, use that. I actually still have some of this brown from earlier mixed up, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. You're just going for like a chocolate brown, I guess, which is already this background color, but I'm going to just add a few more kind of lines. And as you see, I'm just very loosely doing this. I'm not worrying too much about perfect lines, because these are all getting kind of smushed down anyways soon. Okay, so there's those ones. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of red, just to give it a bit of color, because I want some of the orange to show through ultimately. So when I put this red in, and then when I put the mix this orange color that we laid out with the red, it'll brighten it a little bit. So yeah, you want to stick with like a darker orange, red, even your blues are okay for any of your bluish, dark bluish mixtures. But yeah, a lot of these colors that are still on the palette can be used, but I would suggest like browns and reds and some of these like a burgundy kind of mixture or deep purple. I'm going to go and I'm going to just rinse off my brush really well. Then I just kind of squeeze out the moisture with my napkin. And then I'm going to actually do that same thing where I'm kind of just smoothing everything out. So if you see, I'm just laying my brush flat. Now, if your colors have kind of dried, like any of your lines, then just add a little bit extra water to your brush. You don't want a lot though, just enough to kind of moisten it a bit, and it will help you lift some of the colors. So I'm going to get a little closer with this so you can see. So this one here, I'm just going to kind of work those colors. I like to kind of smooth them out so that they're more blurry, almost like they're in the background, like not in focus almost. So, and I'm just gonna kind of go along, and yeah, I'm not worrying a whole lot about that. Just kind of smooth them out a little bit on the lines, and then now I'm gonna do something. If your center is starting to dry, which mine is, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a little bit of red. You can grab any color you want, really, if you want to add more colors in. But I like to add, once this sort of dries a little bit, a few kind of brighter highlights. Oh, I think I'm standing right in front of it. I added one here, and then this. Just a few, maybe like 3 or 4, and yeah, and actually I'm gonna coat my brush because that one was getting a little bit not so bright. I'm gonna make sure it really pops, and I'm not even gonna blend those ones. I'm just gonna leave them as is, just kind of to make them a little more vibrant. And I'm even going to go and I'm going to grab a little bit of this orange color and add a few of those. And that's just kind of to finish it off and give it, like, that's just what I do the second time around. I'll add a few of the really bright ones and make those random too. So that sort of finishes off the center area. You can re-highlight some of your yellow ones. It's hard to get this. I want you guys to be able to see without the glare. There we go. I'll tip it for a little bit. This is my baby yellow now. And I really want to go really thin with these ones and just kind of put them very randomly. I don't want them to look symmetrical or anything. And you just go with however many colors and variations you want to add. Just feel free. Just fun with it. Okay, so that's that part. I just thought I would do that now while I got all these different colors out. Now, now the outside of the flower is something you can add in now at this stage. So I'm going to go with this dark chocolate brown again, and I'm just going to basically go right up with the bottoms of these flowers is a good guideline. So don't worry about anything much, like making it a perfectly straight or anything. Just kind of do a loose, I hope you guys can see that. I'll try and switch sides just as I go around. So just go around and you're just doing a thin band around the perimeter, really. And what you're going to do with this also is, earlier I was saying not to worry too much about the bottoms of this area, and I'll show you why now, because this is sort of one of the finishing touches of this flower. You're going to obviously be going back over these petals, but I'm rinsing my brush now too because I want to come back in and blend a bit. So I want to start with it. I rinsed it really well in the water, and then I patted most of the moisture off the brush. But I don't really have to worry about the paint too much being like, because I'm going into like dark, so it's not going to matter a whole lot. So I just got this angle brush still, and what I'm doing with this band is I'm just kind of going to go into these darker areas and just kind of shadow them, I guess. So I have pretty much a dry brush, and I'm just kind of doing that, and I'm just kind of moving the paint around, really. If you find that you're kind of don't have enough paint, or your canvas is showing through too much, like just wait a little bit for it to dry. And right here even, oh sorry, let me go closer. Like you see here, a little bit of my blue is showing through there, but that's okay because I can easily come back and just sort of recoat that. What you want to do is just get like it basically covered as much as possible, and it'll just give that more solid ness to it. And this is just to kind of tie this flower in, or like attach the back, because they would go right in behind. So, and I'll put a little shadow up there, and I kind of lost a lot of paint, so I may grab a little more of my brown and just redo that one band there, and then add a little dark there, shadow. Okay, so that's basically that part. Now, now I don't have much of this left, so this is a good time if anyone's just joining and they weren't sure how to get this chocolate brown sort of darker hue. If you don't have brown on hand, all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some red, this medium or medium red, and then I'm going to grab, this is just my, well actually, this is almost close to the color, but I'll get the actual color just to demonstrate. But it's like a cyan blue, or so I'll stick that right in there. So now, this sometimes takes a bit of experimenting, but if you mix them around, you're looking for a deep purple. So half and half is usually good, but sometimes depending on how much pigment is in each brand of paint, you're going to get variations. So like right now, I'll probably want to add a little bit more red. So let's add another little peak of red. And there we go. So now, you might not be able to see that, but it's definitely changing to a nice purple hue. And a good way to gauge it, if you sometimes just adding a little bit of white, I have some yellow on it, will help you to sort of see that with what hue it'll brighten up to. So I'm seeing now that I probably want to add a little bit more red into that, and then you see it. could like. But you just want to make sure that it's darker and and it's going to kind of stand out a bit. Like to do like a deep and deeper kind of to kind of separate this from the flowers and stuff. So now when I did the shading earlier for this area, like I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just softening that now. So I'm going in, I cleaned my brush and made it, and kind of patted off a lot of the water, and I'm just going back and forth with this. So this was basically almost a dry brush, and I'm not going to go too far down, I'm just sort of softening that edge there. And I'll show you up close there. So it's just like, it's not so bold. Like if I go and do just that band, I'll just give an example, you're going to see like this really, really bold kind of line right around here. But then just rinse my brush again and show you. I'm just going to take that edge. This is a clean, dry brush. It didn't have a lot of water, and just kind of buff that in so it's more blended. And then you get like almost this shadow that looks like it makes this, I think, center look more circular, like it's bending inwards to, like on a slope almost. It just gives it some depth and makes it look more rounded, I guess. And I'm going to go right over that center again with Mars Black, a second coat of it, just to brighten, or to really deepen that. Okay, so now, once you've done that, I'm going to just switch and rinse my brush really good now. You want to get all the dark heat off, for sure. And so I just got that clean now, and I'm going to do these. Now, while this is still wet, I'm going to you want to just keep an eye on this band. You don't want it to dry like completely. You can do this at any time, but you're going to want to do that same thing where you've brought in the shadow from the edge of it. And I'll show you this kind of technique. It's some people I think it's called stumbling with your brush, but you just kind of lay your brush flat and just lightly kind of wiggle it back and forth like this, very, very lightly. And you can also pat some of this color to get that shadow. So if your paint is still fairly wet, you don't want to like have the canvas show through by adding so much pressure, you can just pat it. You're just looking for like a gentle kind of dusting of the shadow. And you can kind of bring it up a little bit. This gives it a nice touch. Okay, so other than that, getting these sort of worked out, you may want to go back and kind of smooth. Once this is kind of dried, you might want to do this same step, like over tops, because you're seeing like the texture kind of changed right there in different spots. It looks a bit patchy, but you might want to do another little band and then blend that back out, like once this all dries. But now this is really going to be like the final step of the piece, is coming back in with the petals and just kind of working some color into those. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come in with some of the oranges and lighter colors. So I'm going to go with orange and probably the baby yellow and the straight yellow, kind of in combination. And I might add a little bit of red here and there to this orange, or mix the separate orange even. Maybe over here with just some red again and some yellow. So I may add some more right now with just a tiny bit. I probably won't be using a lot of red. And also magenta would be great for this step. It will give you a really nice orange. So I'm just kind of mix over here a little bit darker of the orangey shade. So you can see side by side, as long as they're sort of different. Like from each other, and there's going to be some contrast to separate the textures of the piece. So now that you've got this base layer on, this is going to be very, it's going to pop a lot. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to kind of dust over the same way, but I'm going to really try to kind of get these coated in a way that is getting closer to like a finished look. So you really want to, for example, come right in between these and do the shape that you're going to want to achieve. If you want to fix any of the edges and stuff, you can come right out and fix those. I'm going to grab some of this darker shade here, and I'm going to go in and I'm just adding, I have my brush sideways again and pointed upwards with the tip pointed up, and I just do some lines like that, and then I lay my brush flat and kind of smooth those out by sweeping. And same thing, I'm just going to work around. I'll do them a few up close just to kind of show you guys, and then I'll just go around the petals. And I'm going to grab a little bit of my clean water and just kind of mix in a couple drops, because my peanut is kind of getting sticky. There's not much in these little pots over here, so I probably could mix a little bit more. That would spare me having to add so much water. But so, oh, that's kind of sideways. So what I did, I'm going to lift this one up so you can see this as well. Right around the edges is you can kind of start to go right into the center there. Now you want to kind of start being aware of where you're stopping, like so you don't kind of get too close to this edge and go overlapping it or anything. So there's a couple of my shapes. You see, I'm just kind of leaving breaks in them. Now, here's the other step, is that you're going to rinse your brush and pat it again because you're going in to blend. And with a dry, kind of cleaner brush that's rinsed off, you're going to come back, and I'll move this up here. You're going to just smooth those out the same way and kind of blend those. So you'll see as you sweep over them, they're going to just kind of like soften a little bit. That's all you're going for. You don't have to worry too much about precision or anything along these, making them perfect. You just need to kind of blend in. You're going to want to, like, it's okay to have a little bit of this yellow and different shades kind of showing through. That's kind of what makes the petals look a little more flowy. And I think then I'm going to switch between different colors just to show you. So I was working with the orange and the other orange, with the dark and light orange. And you see, if I add a little tiny bit of yellow over top of this, you're going to see like, and even like thinner lines. So I'm still following the general shape of the petals as I add these lines in. So what I'm going to do, and so you just basically rotate that same way between dark and light. So what I like to do is go along and just kind of do this orange for each petal. I'll move so you guys can see these lines, right? So I would only do a couple at a time because these lines like are so thin. The paint, it will dry really quickly. So you don't want to, like, unless you want the lines to be more defined, you don't really want to leave. And I'm going to go right down and cover up some of these blue areas. That's okay if you go over this band a little bit. Just try to avoid picking up any of that black paint on your nice light colors on your brush. But you're going to go back and redo that line anyway, so it's okay. I'm going to grab a bit of red and some yellow quickly. Mix some more. I needed some more in that one. So this is just my medium yellow mixed in with some of the Cadium red. Okay, so as I go around, yeah, I'm just doing a couple at a time. Like, unless your studio space or your painting space is more humid, then you make, or even different qualities of paints or varieties will dry at different speeds. But I find that these dry pretty quickly. So I like to just do a few at a time, and then I'll come back with I just rinsed it in water again and pat it dry. And I'll do a few at a time. And these don't have a whole lot of paint, these ones in particular. This one sort of does, but I can kind of get away without rinsing my brush in this instance. Normally I'll rinse every so often, but my brush is still pretty dry and I'm not seeing a lot of paint on it, so I'm I'm just going to grab these, and here we go. So you're starting to see some like personality come out of this now. I'm going to go like sort of focus on these bottoms of it, trying to get the color just deep down, or like deep towards the center, pulling that in. So I'm just kind of, you can just do like a kind of curved upwards, like you don't want to cover up this center at all, or totally. So those are the light colors. You can kind of go back and forth like with those and like rotate between light and dark, and add, the more you do, the more layers, the more you're going to find that it gets like more with depth and texture. But so with that behind petals, I'm going to go back to this sort of deep, it's almost like a burgundy, but it was just a bit of a purple and blue mixed together earlier. So this, even like if you added like, again, like I had mixed up with the purple blue and then just added a bit more of the red into it, you'd probably get like something similar to this. This is what you're going for. This is magenta as well is mixed in with this, but you can also get just rotate between your blues and your reds and get a very similar tone to this. So just go like half and half of purple and blue, and then even if you add a little tiny bit of yellow, it gives it kind of a richer, more closer to brown. And you get some kind of orange undertones going on. So yeah, the trick is to keep it a little bit dark. I might add a bit of this deeper purple, just to really darken that. Now I'm going to just go in and see how this color kind of shows up on this behind, these behind ones. What I want is for them to be, I want them to be very deep in behind there, but I like to have the texture on them as well. So I want a few different colors on there, and it was kind of not as colorful as the front ones. Color variations. You probably can't see a whole lot of that on the camera, but I'll come up close and show you how that looks now. So just even adding these, I'll try and get even closer here. So just adding a little bit of color variations kind of adds to the look of them. And you can get even closer to these petals. Try not to cover them completely, but there. So yeah, you can go ahead and do those. And then I like to take like a mid-toned orange, maybe not the brightest of the oranges, but the darker orange and just do like a nice highlight. You want to go like easy on it though, because you don't want to brighten it completely up. But I do like to do like in this center, like I'm going to try to leave this dark, but kind of come from the, I'll do this right up close so you guys can see, but I'll try to come from the outside, and I don't want this orange to be much darker than this color, but orange is a nice hue to kind of brighten things up, so they look like they're like brighter near the tip of the flower. So, and if you have just like a straight orange on hand, that would be totally great for this too. You can mix those with just red and yellow, or even magenta and yellow. Okay, so I'm just doing really just the outside edge, and maybe a couple this side. Oh, I totally went right off the screen. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just kind of started on the edge, and I wrapped it around the, oh, that's covered too. So I wrapped it around the outer, like, sides, and then, so this one's probably a better example. So I just wrapped it around the outside, and then maybe like one or two down the center. And you can even drag a little bit in there. So, see there. Now you can soften that a little bit too. You don't have to worry too much because it's pretty dark, and it's more in the distance, but and it's more subtle. But you can just do the same thing where I just rinse my brush and like patted it off, and then you just kind of soften those lines a bit. You see, it doesn't look so it looks more like a blurry effect. So just try not to mix all the colors into too far with each other and still have the variation. Okay, so as you can see, it's starting to take its like life. If you look at the center of the flower, there's a little bit of yellow just kind of around the like middle center. I'll try and move this over. See there. Okay, that's great. That's a way better angle there. So I'll kind of just hold this sideways for a second to show you guys. I'll have to hold that like that for a sec, just because of the way the light is hitting this, unless I can get this shine better. That's kind of better. Okay. It's more. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think that's kind of better. I'll show you guys. So, all you're going to do is take one of these pointed brushes, like this, and I'm actually just going right into like the straight yellow, so I have a little bit of my, but it's okay if it's like the lighter yellow too. It's not be a big deal. Either of the yellows will work. You might want to get a little bit of lightness. Now I'm going to actually take some of this, or you might want to brighten it a little bit, just so it's not overly yellow, straight yellow, but you might want to just make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. And I like to kind of get mine into like a nice point to do this, so I can kind of, if you have like a flat surface, and sort of smooth it out so it's pointed again, and then just go around the center, and I'm actually just dotting like around, so just little dots like this. Nothing technical. Nothing technical. Just little dots like that. And you can go in and again now, since you had that yellow, and you can at that point like mix an even brighter shade of that. So I have lots of white in there. And make it a really light version of it. And come back again and just go back over it. And even wait for it to dry, and it will, but you see, it gets even brighter, like a second coat. And that dries pretty quick, so you should be able to do that in no time. And then, so yeah, I just dotted that. And then with that same like yellow that you have out there, you can go around and just sort of add a few little highlights to the very tips of these. And you're going to see this is going to really kind of give it a nice finishing touch here. So I'm just kind of doing just the tip area of these petals. So I'll come closer just to close. Try to make sure the petals in the camera this time. So now I'm only doing a few, and I'll have to redefine that one a little bit. But so I'm really just going around the edges, and then I'll come back in and with a clean, dry brush again, like I'm rinsing and about to blend, and then I'll kind of come back and I'll smooth those out like this. And just lay my, I'm just laying my brush flat for the most part and kind of brushing over this. There we go. And you can come back in, you can do, so as you see, I'm sort of just rotating between like the dark colors and the light colors. A good thing to do after is just take some of your orange or one of the darker mixes, and once this is a bit more dry, you can come back in and really even brighten these, continue to brighten these behind ones a bit. I might add a little bit more yellow to brighten up that orange. And I'll go to this side and kind of get, this has gotten quite a bit darker than we originally started with. So you can add some highlights to these too, but you don't want to go too bright. But just kind of continue to rotate between the darks and the lights with these and the other ones. If you find you've been painting them and then letting that layer dry and you still aren't seeing them pop a lot, you can continue on doing layer after layer with these. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow and white to this one. I want it to really kind of stand out a bit more with these behind ones. So I'm going to get even more sparing and just kind of really focus on just the very top of these because I'm getting bright. And I might do it some just down the center just to kind of, just maybe one. And then you can soften those and kind of spread them along the back, and you'll see them starting to get kind of a nice soft color to them. Oops, I'll bring that down lower. We're getting a nice rich kind of hue. This one right here is a good example. So, and yeah, you can kind of, the more you brighten these, you may want to brighten those more and so on. It's kind of like you just continue to work the colors in until they sort of, you get a feel of the way that you want them to stay afterwards, or when they start to look good to you. I'm mixing now some yellow again, and I really want to kind of bring these a bit more solid now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go around the edge again and add even more lightness. So I'm going to do those same lines where I'm not like laying my brush flat originally. I'm just doing the outlines. And I do the edges first, if you notice, because that's usually when I have the most paint on my brush. And that's the time when I can kind of do a more even line. Like as your brush uses paint, it'll get more sticky or kind of patchy. And when you're doing paint lines, you want to have nice flowing, kind of more moisture on your paint. So I'm just kind of continuing those same shapes and the same technique as have been doing all along, just kind of repeating as I go. So you see they're getting more solid and bright. Just add a bit of light to the bottom and fill in some of these bottom areas. But yeah, so now don't worry so much about these bottoms because the final step is actually to blend out that band again. But I'm still kind of, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go along and quickly kind of add different highlights using the same kind of idea where I'm trying to keep these behind ones dark, but not too dark, kind of still have some light, mostly focused in the tops of them. And like I'm doing this sort of very slow because I want you guys to see the pattern that I'm doing. But of course, like if you are watching this and you've got it and you're used to what I'm doing to rotate between the colors, then you can kind of just go right ahead and do it a little more freely. That's sort of the idea where once you have that technique or pattern down, you can kind of just let your painting kind of take shape. And I'll do this band here now just because I want to show you guys like this last step for anyone who's kind of already got enough laid out. I'm just mixing a bit of brown here again so I can add it to my black. It's more of a brown hue because I don't want to go straight black here because it may be a bit too hard. But this will be probably the last step of the painting so that anyone who's kind of wanting to wrap theirs up, they can do so. You want to get very close to black but not you don't want it to be like total black, because when you start to buff this area out, which we're going to do to kind of give it a bit of texture, you don't want it to look, you want it to kind of come out as like a brown. So I'm doing the same thing where I'm just adding a thin band around the perimeter again, and if you can see, it's very, very dark again. About the width of your half-inch brush on this canvas, and probably pretty similar even on a 16 by 20. So I just smooth that out nicely, and I don't want too much water on my brush for this step. Now I'm going to rinse because I want to blend, and I'm going to dry my brush really well this time. This is you definitely don't want much water on the brush for this step, so it's practically totally dry. And then so now I'm going to just kind of start patting this area again, and you can see now that this is dry, it's very, it's a lot like that initial band had dried, it's more solid. And so I'm going to come up close because I want you guys to really see this. I'm going to do this first because I don't want that to dry, so I'm going to just go and soften that now with my dry brush. And if it's not lifting at all and it's really you're not getting rid of that hard line by kind of moving over it softly, then just add a tiny bit of water to your brush, like to get your loosen the paint a bit. Like that will definitely be okay. All right. So now I am actually going to rinse my brush after I do that, because I picked up a bit of the brown paint now, and I've got the moisture off again. And I'm going to come back in now. So this still is a little bit still wet. So I'm going to just kind of pat that. But this time I'm going to actually take some of this color and kind of bring it in to, I'm going to try and get a petal up close here. I'm going to actually bring it into a petal a little bit, just at the bottom. And if you see, if you kind of just pat with a very dry brush, and you can kind of just go over really gently like that. And if you see, like, I really have barely any paint at all on my brush. If you start to get where your brush is like really wet, or you're seeing a lot of color, this is just like dusting, a very light dusting. Like there's barely any, if I show you up close, there's hardly any paint on that strip. It's a very thin kind of layer. That's what you're going for. And then you kind of just, I'm sort of just shaping and shadowing these bottom of these petals here. I'll move over a bit. And if you see the difference between, like, say, this petal and this one just looks a little less shadowed and kind of out of place. It looks like it doesn't connect to the flower as well. But if you see, this is so subtle, but I think it's a really nice effect for the bottoms of these, and it gives a bit of shadowing coming from each flower, bouncing off some of the darkness. So these are just little steps. I mean, these are also optional. These, I'm going to add a little, I'm going to just reinforce this little band that I've made as I'm going. So, like, as you're doing this, you'll find that the band starts to kind of get patchy, so you can just add another really thin coat if you need to in between. And I'm not adding any water at this point, so I'm just going to add a new band, and I'm going to rinse, and always rinse before I blend. And then I'm really going to squeeze my water out good, or my brush out good, and I'm going to blend this again so that it doesn't dry. You don't want that hard line to dry. And I'm just going to soften that edge again. And then I'll come back and I'll do this around. You want to go, like, pretty much all around the flower. Just be really gentle, and you just kind of pulling the paint. And don't worry if you pull too much, because you can always add another, like, band again. Just kind of keep smoothing it out around. And basically just stealing paint from that band and using it to kind of do a really light, with the dry brush, a really light kind of dusting. You can even, like, rub your brush on your napkin from time to time, just to get a little bit of the pigment off, or if there's too much moisture. And yeah, so that's really, you can kind of wrap these shadows around a little bit if you wanted on, like, say, one side of each petal, just to kind of give it like a shadow on one side. I find that nice too. So I'm just grabbing, I'm always stealing from this band of paint here. And it's a band that's very thin paint with very little water in it. Okay, so I'm just kind of going now on the right side of each of my petals and kind of bringing the shadow about halfway or a third up, just on one side, just a little bit, a little gentle slope of it. I'm going to steal some more paint, and there we go. Okay, so that's good. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to take the same deep brown, and I'm going to do little lines, like just coming from the center of, or from where that band is, sorry, and I'm going to put them upwards. So I'm going to do, and I'm using that same brush, and I'm going to try and make really thin lines with very little paint on my brush. I'm just going to kind of come upwards with those. Again, I really don't want a lot of paint on my brush, just a tiny bit, just enough to kind of do a thin layer. And I kind of twirl it on some of them, like a gentle, kind of like an S. If you were to do it in slow motion, it's like a very gentle curve S. Or some of them I just do straight, but I like to kind of curl some of them. And then I'm going to rinse my brush again, and I'm going to smooth those out a little bit. I'm going to pat very, very dry my brush. That's clean, and I'm going to go just gently kind of smooth those out. Now, you really do want to make sure, like if you're about to press down on one of these lines, you want to make sure that there's not a lot of paint there. Like if there was a big clump and you did that really quick, you'd kind of ruin all this work you did on your petal. So yeah, the trick is just to kind of have very, very little paint. So I'm just kind of softening those a bit. And I might even like just around the bottom kind of make them a little bit, I'll bring that up a bit, and kind of just make them a bit more wide at the bottom even. Gives a nice effect. Okay, so the last thing I would do here is I would take that brown again. I'm going to add even a little bit of this red to really make a nice rich chocolate brown. And I'm going to do this band again. A nice thick one. And this one will be the one that is supposed to kind of just stay and be solid at the top anyways. We're still going to blend that down. I'll come close with this. This is one of the last kind of things I'll show you for this, and the rest of the things, the rest of the way the painting looks, as you've seen, the more kind of layered, I'm just kind of continuing on and softening that, but I'm going to rinse my brush off now because I want to blend that a bit better. So as you see now, I'll pat dry my brush and it'll be cleaner, and you'll see this blend out a bit better. So I've got this band, I'll come close here. So here's a good example of where the dark and the light, and you see kind of like a more defined line, but you can just lightly dust with a brush with a little bit of water, but not too much on it. And I'm just kind of going around in the circle. And I'll come out a little bit, but you can even do a little bit of dusting, like with the really thin areas, and just kind of keep smoothing it out. And then when you get like to the end, you want to just leave that like solid, not go up too much. Okay, so there we go. So now you can see it's sort of like it looks more circular now around. Now that's pretty much the idea of the painting. You can come back and kind of define these edges and deepen the shadowing in between. You can add a bit more reds. Like for example, you could put a little bit of red, that's just like a little dot of red, medium red, at each of these bottoms, for instance, and that like a darker color, and kind of wipe your brush or rinse it if you want to go in and blend. And as long as you're working with a very dry brush, you see I'm squeezing all the moisture out, you can kind of add a little bit of color to these, especially once they're dry. It's almost like a wash that goes over top. You can then take, like, even if you take, if you want it to really pop, you can take like a straight Mars black and just mix it right in with your chocolate brown. And this is where I'm going to show you like how using darker colors. So right now we haven't used a whole lot of black, and there's definitely some shadowing going on that looks very close to black to the eye, but very little black has been used. So just to show you now how much it will pop, because we didn't use black for everything, is when you're doing these lines, you can see that now, that variation, where if you had used black to mix that initial brown, you might not get to see that same pop. So I'm going to do the very bottoms of these, just a little bit, and in the corners of these, and that's really going to separate the back. I'll go close up just to show you kind of what I'm doing. I'm just going to do the outsides of these. So you leave a little bit of light in between, right here, and just kind of a thin line. Now some of them are so tight together that they're going to be almost solid, but that's what I'm doing, is kind of sticking to just the perimeters of each of the light flowers, so kind of wrapping around the bottoms of those. That'll give you some nice shadowing, so you can see there, it gives depth, right? Okay. Alright, so I just want to say that I know this paint night has ran on way longer than the original timings, and so I'm not sure where everybody is watching from and whether they were able to continue on. I'm just going to talk as I'm adding some finishing details that you can follow along with or whatnot. I just added a bit of yellow or lightness, and I'm just reinforcing some of these colors that I did earlier just to make them pop a little bit more. But so I'm a little bit of white, and just continuing to brighten some highlights and low lights and stuff. But so yeah, like I don't know where everyone's watching from and whether they're able to paint along, or if some people are going to be watching afterwards. I want to say once again, I am so sorry for anyone who's had planned for the certain timing and my video feed wasn't working, so we got started way late. But I do appreciate everyone and all the help and for getting me my video, getting the feedback on how the video is fixing up. But I hope everybody is able to find this video ultimately. I'm going to be sharing links for anyone who wants to watch a replay of the video, and I'm also going to just add or I'm also going to give directions like how to get to the future videos and whatnot, and also I'll put the material list and everything up for everyone, and you can access those anytime. So hopefully that will work out okay. I would hate to see anyone who happened to buy our supplies and isn't able to join this. So yeah, I hope that we can get that sorted out. Please send me any feedback. Obviously, there was some issues with this getting started here, but hopefully everyone was able to follow along okay. I haven't had a chance to really check the messages for a bit, so I'm just going to do a quick check. Oh, thank you, Danielle. You can go and kind of just keep continuing to add these highlights as I'm just kind of saying some hellos and explaining a few things to anyone who just kind of has joined now or is looking for information on how to get the original full video. So it will be edited a little bit. And that's probably a good thing because we played our video for a few times, and as well as the audio. So this week I'll hopefully be nailing down finally the best way to get this feed, and I'll be doing a few trial feed video sessions to make sure that everything is working. I'm going to be moving into a different studio. My husband is actually making me an artist studio kind of out in our yard, and it's going to have everything hopefully tailored more so to this kind of thing. It's all very new to me, and I'm just doing a bit of blending there. It's all very new to me doing the video stuff, but I am really enjoying the challenge. It's a definitely learning curve for me, but I'm really enjoying seeing people, especially ones that I've never painted with before, joining in and sending me some pretty amazing pictures of the art that they had done for the last couple of paint nights that I did online, and I was amazed because we also had some different issues arise with those lives as well, but it's a bit of a science getting those to work smoothly, but hopefully I'll get us a system that works a lot better. But yeah, so please send me your suggestions, your pictures, any of those things. I usually do like a vote up on my page for like what the next painting will be, and people can just kind of give their feedback and see like what they want to paint. The background of this painting right now looks very light. I'm not sure, or very blue, but you can I think it's just the lighting because my background's so green right now, because that was actually a green screen I'd set up, and I'm actually painting in a basement studio of my house, and can't wait to get into the new art studio, and it's going to be very beautiful. And he's very talented. He does carpentry and that sort of his art, and he's also an artist as well. So he has all kinds of talent. So that's pretty much. I'm going to just leave that with that, or like that. I might see. Sometimes I get tempted, and I want to just add more and more details. Like right now, I just wanted to add a few more little red kind of. Oh, I've got a bottle right in front of the camera. Sorry about that. There we go. So I just wanted to add a few little red. I washed out a bit of this the color here, putting in that dark like border there around the flower. So I just want to kind of make that look a little more natural by adding some color into that. So there we go. Okay. And the angle for this particular piece has been really hard to kind of get it so you guys can see the little finer details. There we go. It's kind of tricky, but I'll take a photo of it after to see the final outcome. But yeah, I mean, I hope that if anyone has any questions, they'll certainly let me know. We'll have it usually takes me about a day to edit the footage and whatnot. So hopefully you found this video if you had lost it. And I hope that you can find the time again to join in and create something. Hopefully next time if you join us, it will be a totally smoother video. And right now I'm just taking like my oranges and just adding a few little highlights here and there. Now, the background, I was saying earlier for people who aren't totally comfortable with like writing, like doing handwriting or what, the quote that's in the background, if you wanted to like add that in, but you didn't feel comfortable using the paintbrush, well, you can go to Walmart and get like paint markers, or most art stores, like acrylic paint markers, and they're actually a lot easier to use. That's a good suggestion, I'd say, for anyone, or even get a
stencil if you have a friend that has a Cadium team or you have one yourself. Or you can even get with the stencil letters, probably. Or you can just leave it blank. I've seen lots of people do that also. Okay, so the quote here, you can you can put anything you want. I've got "You are my sunshine," so I'll probably write that same thing in for this. But it's totally open. You can write your own thing or change it up if you'd like, or just leave it plain. I've seen this is actually a painting we do for mom and daughter paint night, and or just parent and kid paint night, and we'll put the quote in, and then we actually like make this a full circle. So originally when we do the circle first, and then the other person will connect it, like we'll put the two canvases together, and then it becomes like a full, I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning in case anyone was thinking with their families, but yeah, you can kind of connect them, and then it makes like one big flower, which is really cool. Okay, so I'm going to just go in and just attempt to do this lettering here, trying to finish this off. I'm pretty much done with, I'm going to just leave the painting as is for that for now, and then I'll go ahead and just put this in. So if you are going to do the lettering, I would just suggest using something like a punctured brush or something smaller. And this is the zero, I meant the zero round, but these are called spotters. See, I'm just going to get like as much paint off as possible, and I am going to add a little bit of water to my paint, because that's a good trick, because when you're doing the lettering, you don't want it to be like dripping or anything, so it doesn't go down the canvas, but you want it to be very flowy, like an ink almost. So let's test it there. Okay, so what I do is I do like the first layer of my lettering, and then I'll go in, like you could even take a pencil or something and mark this off the way that to make sure that you like it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to come up close and show you guys like a good way to get the lettering kind of more solid, just so that I can show that. So if you were doing like the letter here, I'll just take a look. I'll start maybe here. So, oh, I think I'm covering that. Okay, I'll come like down here. So you see how thin that is? It's just a very thin coat. So I say it's sort of the same like as like a nail polish, where you really got to let that first layer dry, and you want the first layer to be like pretty thin, so that it's going to, the second coat will be way better. Or we'll have way more like coverage. And if you don't let this layer dry, then when you go to put the second one on, it's not really going to work out, because it'll just keep pulling up and showing the background through. So let's show that. So I'm just kind of lightly smoothing. I'm just taking my time. My handwriting isn't perfect, but this is my go at it. So there we go. So that looks pretty solid now, but in person it actually is pretty patchy. I don't know if I can get close enough to... yeah, it's not really picking it up, but you'll see what I mean, where it's probably going to show through a little bit of the blue, especially after it dries. So yeah, all you really want to do is just kind of go through and do that first layer of letters, and then by the time you get to the end of the quote, it will likely all be dry, like at the beginning at least. So I'm just going to go around and Very thin layer, and you just kind of continue on until you get everything mapped out, and then go back and do a second coat. And so, like, if you did a letter that you didn't really make the right shape or something, you can shape it out. So I'll just kind of do that. I'll work away at this. That pretty much wraps up the painting for the most part. You could definitely go in and add a lot more highlights and different things, but it's one of those things that you could be there for. If you can just keep coming back and back to it and add as much of that as you like, and it changes it each time. So kind of got to decide how much detail do you want to go with. Okay, so it's a bit tricky, this part, because it's so tiny, especially on a smaller canvas. It'll be tinier again, but you basically are just doing a little raised